Welcome to the War Room. Today we're going to talk about something that pretty much everybody has some sort of understanding about, and that's vampires. And we're going to put that in context with a modern woman that so many men who run into red pill content and red pill awareness, so many of us run into women who enlighten us to the reality of their nature. And a lot of times, like I said in a previous video, the women that we're dealing with in our Instagram social media society, they're highly narcissistic. Now, narcissistic people, when you think about it on the surface level, it's people that are, they're into themselves. They constant selfies, self fluffing, all of that shit. But it goes a lot deeper than that. When you deal with somebody who is really suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, there are a lot of things that go into the way that these people treat other people and the experiences that people have when they're dealing with them. It feels like you are attacked by some sort of evil entity. And it's really hard. It's hard to explain this to people who don't understand, people who have never experienced the suffering and the abuse that comes at the hands of somebody that is a narcissistic person. It's hard to understand the mind fuck, if you will. And the other day I was watching 30 Days a Night, and something happened in the movie and it struck me as poetic, if you will. Now, in this movie, 30 Days a Night, I'm not going to go into the great detail of the movie, but it's a vampire movie, if you haven't seen it. And in this movie, I think they're in a part of Alaska or wherever. I'm not sure where it's set at, but wherever it's at, this place goes through a whole month cycle of darkness. And that's when vampires, they move around in the darkness. That's where they live, in the darkness. So this is basically 30 days where they just get to go weapons hot. They don't have to hide. They can just feed. That's what they do. So in this movie, the whole premise is these people that are stuck in this place have to deal with this onslaught of these crazy vampires. Now, it's not the vampire tale itself that was so telling. There's a part of the movie where there's a guy that was helping the vampires out, and I guess that he was helping them infiltrate this town, and get it up to where they would have their buffet set out. Well, there's a scene where the guy is talking to one of the buffet members, one of the people that is being hunted. He's talking about how the vampires are going to hook him up, because he helped them out, that they were going to basically turn him into one of them. And he believed it. He was a pretty pathetic dude, and I'm assuming that they gave him a little bite or whatever that made him feel like he was feeling. And to get full vampire, there's a process. Well, when the vampires rolled through, they didn't give a shit about homie. They just used him up. And in the movie, when he discovered that he had been used and that they weren't gonna promote him to full vampire, the despair and the despondency in this dude's face was telling. And it struck a chord for me, because I'm not too proud to say I've had my heart stomped by some trifling bitches. And when you're in those positions and you find yourself smitten, it's a painful place, because when you go into these things with a belief system, and when it gets shattered completely and totally. And it leaves you in a place where it's like a vacuum. There's a huge void. And in this scene of this movie where this dude realizes that it was all for nothing, the light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you know what? That right there, this movie, this premise of the way that vampires are, the way that just that whole story, that whole sexiness about, about what they are, how they operate, and what they do to their victims, and the different levels of that, it blew me away, because it was like, this is a perfect example of how women that, your Instagram thoughts, bullshit, just any woman who's got a cock carousel in rotation. A lot of times the guys that are on this carousel don't realize that they're just part of a play. Now, I want to draw the parallels to this and help you understand this, because if you can understand, if you can overlay what you see and how the operations of the vampires are in the movies, just from the way that they're enticing, they're alluring with their eyes, and all of that shit, man, all of the things that make those stories possible, that make people basically immobile, trapped at their gaze, at their attention. That's the way that a lot of women are, that have a lot of dudes that are playing a game that they don't know that they're playing. And let me unpack this. Now, most vampire movies have different layers, different levels of shit that happens. And so do narcissists. Now, before I go into drawing the parallels and showing what I mean, and in turn giving you, I guess, a wedge, a wooden stake for the heart of these vampires, I want to explain what a narcissist is that makes them like a vampire. People that are narcissists, that really suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, they lack the ability to feel empathy for other people. Their only concern in life is survival. It's their survival. It's their survival of their whatever their immediate needs are. And most of them, at a base level, their needs are validation. They don't have the ability to sustain themselves. They don't like themselves, regardless of the facade that they put forth, which is usually very impressive. What narcissistic people do is they steal the best traits from the people that they've dealt with, the people that they've sucked the life out of. Initially, there's something that attracts them to those people. And what they do is they mirror those people and basically extract from these people the best parts of their souls. And when they leave, the people are left like a vampire who sucked from them. Now, to a narcissistic person, the people that they deal with, they're not human beings. They're just a means to an end. They're tools. That's all they are. And there's nothing that is off limits to these people. There's nothing that they won't do. There's nothing that is, there's no boundaries. So if they have to sell their soul to get their way in a situation, they don't have a problem doing it. They don't have a problem lying. They don't have a problem being manipulative. They don't have a problem destroying somebody else's identity, their world, if it means that for just a brief moment they'll get some sustenance. Now, when you understand that people in a narcissist's life are just fuel sources, that's all they are. A narcissist is an empty vessel with no power, with no confidence, with no personality, with no ability to express themselves out in the world. They have to have validation. They have to have people propping them up. They have to have the outside world feeding them constantly. Otherwise, they feel like they're going to die. And as they age, this gets worse. As women get closer and past the wall, it gets worse, and the psychosis sets in, and they become crazy. That's why you see a lot of women doing things that when they're in their pre-wall years, they would think that they would never do. Women that are sleeping with little boys that are younger than the kids that they have is fucking disgusting. And in their mind, they conflate this willingness of these young men to pump them and play with them as real interest and value on their part. These are all parts of this. This is a fuel. They have to continue to have this fuel, and they can make it okay. That cognitive dissonance that I continue to speak about makes it okay, because they're able to detach the immorality part of it, and because it's making them happy, because it's satisfying a physical need in the direct right now present, none of that matters, and they're able to just automatically shut off any shame because they operate on feelings, and because it felt good, there's justification. But there's always going to be a fuel source. Everyone is always going to be fuel. So when you understand the context of this, a narcissist is a human being that lacks empathy, that doesn't see human beings as people, but rather resources, tools, and fuel. That's the same thing as a vampire. A vampire doesn't really see people as humans. What they are is, it's basically like cattle. Now, there are levels of this, and this is where it ties into trying to deal with modern women and the narcissistic nature of our culture. So when you have a vampire situation, when vampires are doing their thing, they always have a keeper, and this keeper has the ability to live for a while. He doesn't live on a vampire status, but he's given the ability to sustain himself for a long period of time so that he can take care of the vampire. He doesn't really have a lot of worth to the vampire outside of making sure that everything on the outside is taken care of. That is your beta provider in a narcissist's life. That's generally the husband or the boyfriend that doesn't know about the other dudes that are in the closet, the other dudes that she's biting. Now, after you have the Igor keeper, then you have the slave type people, and these might be the ones that are almost vampires, but they don't get to really make decisions. They do as they're told to do. So they'll be the hunters, and this will be blue pill simp type dudes, if you will. I hate that fucking term, but these will be the more agreeable dudes that are willing to provide and go out and do the things that she wants so they can sleep with her. And then you have the level of just straight up food. These are the people, this is the pump and dump. These are the guys that are on her roster that the narcissist keeps on their roster, that makes them really feel good, but they don't want to have anything to do with them. Those are usually the ones that they meet at the bar, the good-looking young dude or the tall dude or whatever it is that moves her. Those are the guys that she'll go in the bathroom and do whatever, just whatever he wants to do, she'll do it. It's just a quick kill. That is just food for her. But then there's the ones that is in the manosphere, the Chads and the Tyrones. These are the guys that they want to stick around. These are the guys that they're willing to promote. But the problem with a narcissistic vampire is a lot of times the Chad and the Tyrones, they don't really want to commit to these women. They don't have to, because they have so many options, and locking down to one and they already know what she is, it's kind of pointless. You can get the best tricks that she knows, and you don't have to do anything but send a text message at 3 o'clock. Why would you text at 9? Why would you go anywhere with her when you don't have to? These are the guys that she wants to bite and try to bring into her world and make a vampire with her as well. But these are the ones that you will always be, the other lesser guys will always be in competition with. These guys will always be able to come out of the shadows and pull this person away, because that's who she really wants to spend the rest of her years with. That's the person that she wants to be a vampire with and for. But here's the thing. Narcissistic people can never stop being vampires. A vampire can never stop being a vampire unless somebody kills them. That's the only way it stops. The only way for a narcissistic woman, a woman who feels entitled to swing from dick to dick, unbeknownst to the victims, unbeknownst to the men that she's playing these games with, those women will never change. They can never change. The only way that they can change this behavior is for them to expire in this world. Just like a vampire, they have to have this constant validation, this constant attention, this constant propping and prepping and preening of they have to constantly have a fuel source. And no matter how good things are with them, they will always go out to hunt. They will always go out to hunt. So if you're in a relationship with a woman who has a huge social media presence, it's really important to her, and you can see a bunch of vampires in her friends' comments, love section. If you see these things, understand that you are in a den of vampires. The woman that you with is a fucking narcissistic vampire. And one day you will wake up and find yourself imprisoned, used up, drained of everything that you were that made you a strong man, wondering how the fuck you let yourself get bitten by a monster. Stay sharp, men. Keep that wooden stake at hand and don't get bitten. Out.